Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Pisgah Podcast.
Thank you for listening to Pisgah. We're your hosts, Drew and Mangler, coming to you live sitting on the toolbox at Club Gap.
This thing isn't the comfiest. I think I may go sit over there on the buckwheat log.
I don't blame you. It gets hot in the sun over here. We've had a bunch of pink bike pond beaver product releases this week. A little too many to name here, but it's good to see that the companies are at least dropping things in lieu of sea otter.
Yeah, kind of bummed for sea otter not happening, both for the launch of new products and also some of the racing that they do there is pretty entertaining.
Yeah, it's a bunch of do what you can with what you got racing there, and it's a unique venue. It's usually dry and dusty as can be, but it's like New Year's for the bike industry.
Yeah, and ever since Interbike kind of stopped being as cool as it used to be, that's kind of the spot in the event that we look forward to.
Yeah, for certain.
It's still a dry spell, great weather. How's your week been, Drew? Did you get any riding in?
Yeah, I've ridden 4 times this week, which is 3 times more than normal.
Okay.
So, yeah, I've had some good, very dry and dusty rides out Old Fort area. I've been down to Pisgah and did a Bennett lap, and then I was out at Big Ivy this past weekend.
Nice. Well, this past week had me on a work trip kind of in the rust and cold belt, but I got a few rides in. I hit up Barbersville City Park, which is just outside of Huntington, West Virginia. It's a really cool city park with some good terrain, steep ups, steep downs, along with some more chill trails that were friendly for me to drag my producer and longtime Pisgah Podcast fan Tim Grant along. We both had a good time there, and then when our shoot wrapped, I made a little pit stop over in Fayetteville, West Virginia on my way home. That's kind of a popular spot for New River Gorge adventures like climbing and rafting, but they actually have some good trails there. Met up with a longtime BMX homie, Chris Jackson, who's a photographer up there. He took me on a little tour of their new spot that's growing, Wolf Creek. It's definitely worth a visit. Some fun features and good terrain there. And there's also a rad brewery right next door to the trailhead.
Yeah, West Virginia's got some gems. I think it's kind of the last frontier of East Coast wilderness to explore, and all kinds of good stuff's popping up around that way. And it's pretty cool that more BMX connections are popping up in mountain biking, especially, I think, with our generation of BMX riders.
Yeah, us mid-schoolers. And interesting enough, sometimes those BMX connections can sneak up on you. So while hanging out with Cashin at the bike farm last week, one of their buds, Shawn Neer, was out from Colorado. Shawn rides for Yeti, which the bike farm reps, and he and I got to chatting, and bam, another BMX linkage with like 1 degree of separation.
Yeah, and he's also one of the top EWS racers in the U.S. and part of Traction Coffee. So yeah, we can't not put the mic on that guy. So here's Shawn Neer.
So Shawn, thanks for sitting down with me. Can you kind of introduce yourself, who you are, and what it is you do?
Yeah, I am 29 years old, living in Longmont, Colorado, just north of Boulder, and I'm a professional enduro racer.
Who are your sponsors?
Yeti Cycles, that's the main umbrella, but Yeti Fox, so we have DT Swiss, Maxis, but yeah, Yeti is the main one.
And how long have you been racing EWS stuff?
3 years now. I did a big push into downhill. It was like my main love growing up, and then around 26, 27, when enduro started making a good impression on the sport, I started moving over. Just the amount of ride time that you got was just like what I needed. I remember flying to Val di Sole for Worlds in 16, and I felt like I saw this one downhill track, and then the hotel, and then the downhill track, and that's it. And then the first EWS I did, we went and did this whole ride and stopped for like a espresso at this little village, and like by the time I got off my bike, I was like, that was 6 hours on the day. I'm good. Like, I do not want to see that thing till tomorrow. Whereas downhill, I was like always wanting a little bit more. So yeah, it was like a really good change for my soul.
And you grew up in Colorado?
I grew up in Northern California. That's where I got into BMX. I had this like quarter life crisis. I remember sitting at this baseball game at like 8, and I was like, this is the most boring thing ever. And right as I got done, I was like, Dad, I cannot do this. And he luckily worked kind of close to this BMX track. I think that's how he found it. And remember going there and was just so intrigued. The two owners' sons, Maddie and Dallas, took me under their wing, and I just never looked back, man. I was just like, could ride as much as you wanted, go practice as much, and like it was just so exciting just to watch the pros. There was always something to do. And then moved to Colorado like 4 or 5 years later, raced a couple seasons of doing nationals, and then there's some neighborhood kids that got me into mountain biking, and same thing, like never looked back. The community, I remember getting to Mountain States Cup, everyone's just drinking Dale Pales ales and just like having a good time. And I was just like, this is where it's at. Like there's no aggressive, families at the BMX nationals. I mean, obviously they put their heart and soul to get their kid to the races, and I get it, but like it was just so laid back, and it just felt like home, like my first mountain bike race.
I remember I had that quarter life crisis as well growing up. I lived like way out in the country, so it was like a used dirt bike or like a new BMX bike. That weighed on me, and I chose the BMX bike mostly because in the long run it would be cheaper for me to like have fun on it because I wouldn't have to buy gas and stuff all the time.
Yeah.
But I think it was a good decision as well.
Dude, I always wanted the moto. Like I had some friends that had it, and I was just always wanted it. My parents were like, no, like get real. When you're an adult, you can buy whatever you want. But they supported me so much in mountain biking, so I couldn't really ask for anything more.
How was your transition going from BMX to mountain biking?
It was really good. I wasn't into like dirt jumping or skate parks yet, and so the transition from BMX racing to mountain bike racing, it was just flawless. Like I remember doing the first mountain bike race, and I was like, this is where I want to be. It was 4-cross at Snowmass in like 02 or 04, and then raced for a couple of years, just dual slalom, 4-cross, and then eventually got into downhill when I was like 14, 15. At the same time, picked the BMX bike up, and it was just like, once I got a car, going to the skate parks, going to dirt jumps, and it's really where my riding took off. I remember going to Lake Arbor with everyone I looked up to. It was like TJ Sharp and a bunch of Yeti guys, actually, because I was kind of the local crew in Arvada. And I feel like those days were the most transformative for me. I remember sitting at the top of this left line. It's called Token. I was just like, even though I've hit it before, I just remember every time I got up there, I was just so scared, and like just battling those fears, I think, helped me a lot, and being able to calm myself. And it was definitely riding that was over my head, and I was just so fortunate to have that and like have those riders close to me.
Yeah,
so
it's something when you're on top of a roll-in and it's like big jumps and stuff, and you've got those butterflies, and just to like be able to turn that off in your mind.
Totally, yeah. And then just, you sit up there and people slam, like, overshoot just down into the next lip, and you're just like, oh my God, he is knocked out. And being like 15, you're just like, oh my God, are you okay, dude? Like, you hadn't seen some of those crashes, and it's like hard to process. And you're like, session still goes on usually if they're not dead. So you go back up there. I'm like, all right, I'm super nervous now. And dirt jump, a lot of skate park around that age. High school, just definitely wasn't the best student, and kind of looking back, I wish I was. And stopped racing around 18, 19. The Mountain States Cup died, and that was kind of the heart and soul of, the Rocky Mountain region as far as racing went. And then it's kind of like you had a ride or didn't. There wasn't a really good national series going, and I was like, I was an electrician at the time. It's what I did. Luckily had a friend when I was like 16, gave me a really good job and paid me well from the start. And so I was like, this is amazing, being a high school kid making good money. And there was a kid on my nonprofit racing team, Orbit, that Shawnee Mac put on, and his dad moved down from Edmonton to run an oil and gas company called Tarpon. And so I was like, jumped into that. He's like, if you ever need a job, let me know. So started working oil and gas for a few years, and just like got super depressed, just like thinking about racing, because I did mess up, I didn't work hard enough, and like I saw this like racing, career just get slipped out of my hands. And I was just like, thought every day, I was like, it's the one thing I was good at, and I just messed it up. I did, and I was just, so that was probably one of the hardest times of my life. Just, the dudes out there are working hard, we were working 610s, and all I wanted to do was go ride my bike, and I was usually too tired. And like Sunday I'd go for a little ride, but like during the week there was no way. I was just getting home and like just chilling. I was going, having dinner and putting my feet up. So
when you're working on those like labor jobs like that, like you make a ton of money, but you have no life.
Yep. Oh yeah, you pay for it, and that's like, you start looking at stuff when you want to buy it, and you're like, that is 12 hours of hard work. I think I'm gonna put that in the bank account and not think about it. So.
Basically, you didn't buy a dirt bike?
No. No, I did. I was making good money and bought a dirt bike when I was working oil and gas. And I made a decision to move into my van and go up to Whistler. And like right before I sold it to this guy, Dave, that I worked with, and he was making good money. So he just bought it. So sold it for exactly what I bought it for like 2 years later.
Got the Whistler fund.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's a very important fund.
Oof, I'm so glad I got that out of my system. Like, I think as far as like going back to those Arbor days and like how transformative those days were, moving up to Whistler as like, you know, kind of more of a seasoned rider and like riding with Remy Metallier and all these really good riders that we were just kind of nobodies at the time. And, you know, you could just like turn your brain off. Like, whereas before thinking about token, you're like, all right, I need to pull up. I need to, you know, pull my heels up when I, you know, peak out. Had to think about all those things. When I got up to Whistler, it was just, you know, all I had to worry about was where could I get a cheap meal and how many laps could I do that day. And like, there was something about that year. I just like started turning my brain off. Like, you just start feeling the trail and like, you know what to do. It's instinctual instead of being like, I need to do this, I need to do that. And I think if it wasn't for moving up, I don't think I would have went back into professional racing.
I think Whistler changes people in how they ride bikes.
Dude, the first time I went up there, I was like 15 or 16. And I think that one trip, it was like 5 or 6 days, changed my life. Like, even just those days, because I'd never seen jumps that big. I'd never seen rock rolls that big. Like, it pushed my riding so much. You know, if you're ready for it, that place can unlock a lot.
Yeah.
Especially coming from the front range. I mean, we have some all right riding. The resorts back then were pretty good, but you just don't understand what's up there. You don't understand how good it can get.
Yeah, you don't understand the possibilities that your bike is capable of.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah,
and then
just hold on.
Yeah, and then just the trails are built really well, so it's like these big rock rollers. As a kid, you're like, no way, and then you do it. And there's like a bunch of grip on the rock, and you're just like, all right, you know, this is the coolest thing ever.
Absolutely. How does Whistler compare to like some of the race stuff you go to now?
That's a good question. It's definitely one of my favorite venues because we race there every year, pre-COVID.
Yeah, pre-COVID.
Yeah, but it's definitely more bike parky. There's definitely...
When they send you guys across the valley to do some of those climbs, like whenever I see the list, I'm like, ooh, that's going to hurt some people.
I know. Whistler Days, it's funny. I feel like EWS has a really grueling year, and each... Like 2018 was brutal. I felt like each promoter was like, oh, I'm going to outdo that one. I'm going to outdo this. And like, we did go to some amazing tracks and amazing places, but they would just be like big day after big day after big day. And like, they would like cancel tracks because they're too gnarly. Like, they'd put us through like boulder fields where they're like, in theory, they're really good. But by the time we raced them, they cut into something that was really weird, you know, like the catch berms weren't there. And it's hard. They were running like in the Tweel. Like, the stuff was so steep. It's like hard to kind of know what the trail's going to break in when you have that many racers. And but I feel like Whistler is definitely a more established type of trail because there's so many tire tracks no matter where you're at in the valley, and they're not going to tear up a brand new trail. That'd be insanity to do.
Yeah.
But it's definitely more high speed, more rough, and longer tracks, like top of the world, you know,
That's
to the village.
Top of the world, like top to bottom. That is such a long run.
It's the beast. I mean, it's like, you know, the stage of the year, and that's definitely one of the best memories of my racing career was 19, that stage. And it's just something you have to be like so methodical about it. And the shorter stages, you're just like going as fast as you can, as hard as you can. And like that one, you find that level that just hurts. It's like 85%, 90%, and just like sit there for 20 minutes and just like try not to make any. You have to be perfect, you know, if you want to be up there. Like, the other dudes aren't making mistakes, so it's like.
And that top section of top of the world, like, it's nothing but rocks that want to destroy your wheels.
Yeah, totally. And then you got to preserve your bike, and I don't know, for some reason I get in this mode of like being at the skate park, because at the skate park, you're just trying to hit perfect transition and just be like perfect. You got
catch
your
back
tunes,
sides and stuff.
You got your tunes rolling, and it's just perfect. And like, that's kind of my approach of just like that intensity. It's like, it's high, but you're more focused on being perfect than just like this all-out blitz speed. And I think that's what really helps me. Like, as far as a racer, I'm very tailored to longer tracks for some reason than shorter tracks. I find myself doing a lot better 10+ minute tracks.
Okay.
And I think it's something about dirt jumping and skate parks that taught me of just like, don't mess up, just like that kind of perfect thing. But when I think on the smaller tracks, I'm pushing a little bit more, and I think I'm trying to be too perfect. Whereas if I was just, you know, not worrying about slipping up a little bit, I'd be better. But yeah, for some reason, if we could just have longer tracks every year, Chris Ball, I'd be super stoked.
Duly noted.
Yeah.
In 2019, How do you think your season went?
Yeah, really good. It started really slow. We went to Rotorua in Tasmania. I did all right there. We went to Madeira, and I had my first like good stage result. I didn't end up. My overall was in the 20s somewhere. I think 22nd. I wasn't too stoked on it. So I was like throwing up some all right results, and then I ended up like tearing my meniscus in my knee in June or July. And it was like 2 weeks before. It must have been July, because it was 2 weeks before Whistler, and I could like barely walk. And it was on a manual down a fire road. I just hit a baby head and stepped out.
Oh,
And luckily, just like so lucky that it tore in a spot that it was like when I extended my knee. I forget if it's on the front or bottom of the meniscus or front or back, whatever. But yeah, I could like barely walk going into Whistler. And then when I started riding, it started like pushing the fluid out and getting there. Through rock sections, it was fine. It was like when it would side load in like a big berm on Dirt Merchant, it hurt a bunch.
Yeah.
But Richie and I rode there for like a week before just to get up there. And there's something about just riding with him and getting up at the pace. But we went 1-2 on top of the world, and it was like just that stage for day one. And it was like kind of a downhill race feel, because you came down, everything was on the teleprompter.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of enduro, like you come down, you can't even see your time, because it's just like you have your transponder on your wrist, and you got to like go on the website and like see where you're at. And so that was super confidence inspiring, with, teammate 1-2. And then it got super wet, and coming from Colorado, I don't ride in the wet much, and fell back. I had a good crash on the last stage, but ended up 11th. But that stage result and a couple of others like helped me. And then, yeah, went to North Star, which is more my liking, just super dry, rocky.
Yeah.
Ended up another 11th. And then we went to Zermatt, which turned out to be an amazing race. It was steep, janky, really rocky. Like I come from Colorado, where it's a lot of jank rock, hiking trails, and was having the best race of my life, and just had an unfortunate crash on one of the last stages. I was like top 5 all day. Definitely would have been up there, and just, yeah, man, just there was like a little rock bench that was like for pushing water off, a little water bar. It was built out of this like stone. Just pushed my front off the edge and just tomahawked. And but yeah, learned a lot from that one. And then we went the week after. I got 11th at that race too, but we ended up winning Trophy of Nations the week after in Italy. So as far as a year, 2019 was a really good year for me. Just started off a little slow.
How'd you feel going into 2020 pre-pandemic?
Really good. I felt like I learned a bunch as far as training went. My coach kind of got me doing these like crit races, which was fun. I think training is definitely something I've lacked coming up. I was just, a skate park kid, dirt jump kid, just like to have fun. I didn't have any friends that were cross country or, roadies. So it's definitely been my Achilles heel, but I kind of got into it. I was an overweight kid. And so now I'm like, if I could ride my, bike for 100 miles, I can eat whatever I want, like under control, but like I can have like that pastry I want or whatever. So, yeah, I felt stronger than ever, was ready.
And then the pandemic hit.
And then the pandemic hit, and then I was like, all right, I got to train. It was like a weird, like I started in my head, I was like, hey, you're training for 2021, but you might race in 2020, because we were doing like these 6-week training blocks, and halfway through it, they'd cancel a race. So we'd like reset with my coach, put another 6-week plan in just for like the next, Italy round, just for it to get canceled. So it's like, I was just like sitting on this edge of like doing high-end work, and just the motivation for me felt like a roller coaster, because it's hard, when you're getting close to races, you're putting in really good efforts, and it's not like earlier in the seasons. We're a little more base work where you can just, kind of chill. And in my head, I was like, hey, we're going to be the best racer we can be in 2021. This is, I've seen how much I've built each year. From 2018 to 19, I was able to train so much more just from that base. And then same thing, 18 to 19. So I was like, hey, just build an insane base for 2021 and come out firing, get on the podium, try to win these things. And that's kind of where my head had to go, because I was just like losing motivation seeing these races being canceled. So at the beginning of the year, though, I was firing on all cylinders, at least motivation and fitness for me. So
for me, 2020 was I probably rode my bike the most. 2020, it was a great bike year, not a good travel year, because that's usually what I live for, is to travel and ride new places.
Totally.
Yeah,
it was actually nice to be home. I didn't realize how much I lacked routine, just like from traveling a bit and all this stuff, and like just eating the same thing for breakfast for a while. I was like, this is really nice for some reason, like I was trying to like look at the small things. I'm like, it's not even riding my home trails or seeing my friends. It was like these small little things I was like really enjoying. So
I had to get out of the travel.
bug.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because like I was flying twice a week, sometimes more.
Yeah.
Pandemic shuts everything down, and then it's like it was good to be home.
Yep.
Yeah, I rode every trail in Pisgah. Like didn't get to hang out with as many people, but
Totally.
still got a lot of bike time.
It was good. It turned out a really good year for the coffee business I own, and it was just like we just hammered down. It was just obviously like routine's still good. I was still training a bunch, but it was something we needed, I guess. Or looking back, it was like really fortunate to have. So we made some really good steps with that. But that's kind of where I turned my focus to get my head away from racing.
Mm-hmm.
I was still training, but I was like, don't even worry about that. If we go racing, we go racing. Like in my head, there's a good quote from Greg Minard. It's like, I'm paid to train, not to race. And that's like the hard work.
Yeah.
Truly, it's like you come in with how much training and your mental preparation with the ceiling, like you're not going to come in and just do some extra stretching and like wins. Like you already know, like there's 6 guys that can win or 7 guys. So they've built that ceiling so high that they can. So kind of just built that in, train, and then go try to sell coffee.
Yeah. So speaking of your off the bike activities, you just mentioned your coffee business. Tell me a little bit about that.
I was working really cold days in oil and gas and kind of fell in love with coffee, just keeping me warm out there. And yeah, I got obsessive with it. It was like the first thing I got obsessive with besides mountain biking, just extraction rates with espresso and how much in, how much out, measuring my coffee to like, a tenth of a gram.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, just, it's so fun. And like, I'm not into like soda or like sweets that much. And it was just like hitting a part of my palate that I just loved, and so yeah, I did that. And then I just kind of saw how much the climate was getting affected by climate change and started reading about how expensive coffee was going to be. So my idea was just to buy a coffee roaster and be able to roast, expensive varietals like geishas and blah, blah, blah. And just kind of at the same time met up with some longtime BMX friends that were in the coffee industry, and we just started joking around. I was like, hey, we should start a coffee business. Yeah, just the pieces kind of fell in line. Mike was working at a place that kind of got bought out, and he wasn't into the management, so he's like, I'm out. This is not why I signed up. This is not the business that I've been helped building. And yeah, in 2018 we launched Traction, and it's just been this growing child, obviously, which is a beautiful thing. But it's been cool to try to grow up in a sense, because mountain biking, it's what I've done my whole life, but it doesn't feel like a job, which is good. I mean, there's obviously politics when you get into getting a paycheck from anywhere, but still, it's not like, it doesn't feel like a 9-to-5, which I feel so fortunate for. And so yeah, it's been cool to like have a business plan, worry about taxes, worry about building these systems for when people come in. Like I can't just expect people to do what Mike and I do. So it's been cool to like mature a bit. It's definitely made me grow up.
I think a lot of bike riders sometimes when they're in their professional prime will overlook what their future holds. And so it's cool to see someone like yourself that's like, I can't be a professional bike rider forever, so how can I continue to carry on?
Totally. And that's, at the end of the day, I didn't know what else I wanted to do with my life after racing. And it was a long time getting here, like been racing a long time, and it took a long time for me to get a real paycheck. It's like, we got to sell bikes, and throwing up random good results doesn't do that. You need to be a figure that people watch, and you need to put up good results and have a good social. And like, it took me a while to learn that, I was just like having fun on my bike. And so it was like scary for me. I was like, are you one injury away from, being out of the sport, or, we're on these 2-year contracts that luckily, Yeti and I have been working together really well. We've been together for 6-7 years now, but still it's like, it's a scary sport as far as like financial security. So that was my stepping stone. I loved it. And yeah, I feel fortunate to like find that. So I do not want to go back to being an electrician as much as, as how stable it is. So yeah, it's been a fun one. It's humbling to be so new at something. So yeah, it's been good.
For 2020, did you have to start to really work on your self-marketing and stuff for both, obviously, the coffee business, but also your bike riding side of things?
I didn't do too much different on my mountain bike side. Before I was like racing professionally, I was just a media ambassador for Yeti. So I really like dived in there. And that's basically, I would do some media projects, and that would pay for my racing.
Okay.
And I would just get a day rate for it. And then, yeah, they weren't in downhill. They were in enduro. So I was just, living in my van, going race to race, do some media projects, go back to racing. And back then I was like way more trying to milk every like I could and, build this brand, because you are building your brand. But as far as, traction, we were building a lot more and trying to be better about that. Just doing like A/B tests, figuring out what works for ads and what is it, educational videos that people want to see to, help them produce a better cup of coffee. And yeah, it's been pretty cool getting the feedback from people, because it's this communication piece, like this icebreaker for people that want to talk to you, but it's hard. Like, you're out on a ride and they don't know how to approach, but coffee is this like little icebreaker that people come up, and I've met so many cool people because of it.
Yeah, it's like, oh, dude, I love your coffee.
Yeah, exactly. And then we start talking about bikes, and it's been so cool to have that. Like, I'm putting together this little coffee truck right now. I just want to go up to trailheads and pull free espresso for people and kick it. And I've been doing these clinics and just meeting the most cool people. Like, I met a guy, Tony, down in Austin doing a skills clinic that won the Super Bowl with the Colts, and like these amazing guitarists and moto guys. And
yeah,
it's
coffee
funny.
opens up a lot of doors.
It does. And I feel like in a lot of sports, I mean, everywhere in life, you're like quick to judge, especially when you get kind of the top, because people are wearing a certain thing. And it's definitely brought that down for me. It's just like, in their own way, they're such rad humans. And yeah, it's just being able to pull shots for people and like maybe show them a different variety or different taste they've never tasted through coffee gets me so stoked. I just want to do that. So
yeah, unlock their minds for stuff other than like the big box stores.
Yeah, totally. And then, I mean, it's just not approachable for many stores to have like geishas and these different things, because who's going to pay $7 for a shot of espresso? I think coffee's 10 years back where beer was 10 years ago. But like, you go to a brewery now, like, you're cool paying $7 to $10 IPA, and you walk out of there $30 and you don't think about anything of it. But buying a $7 cup of coffee, you'd be crazy to do it, So I think, and at the end of the day, it's going to help farms out if we can give them higher, if they're growing better coffees and we're paying for it. Because I can tell most people that listen to this, like, having a Sudan Rame would blow their mind. Just like, there's certain varietals that no one really produced. I think it was like 2013 or 14 when there was actually a farm that produced a good amount of Sudan Rame to sell, because it's just didn't have as much yield. It was, prone to disease, blah, blah, blah. But the first time I had it was the first time it like blew my mind. That coffee, if you ever get a Sudan Rame, get it. It's like very spicy. It has this cardamom note that just, it's mind blowing. Okay. So, but yeah, just showing those to people is what I want to do.
Okay, awesome. So you're on this trip out here to Western North Carolina. Is this your first time out here?
I came out here once when I was in my van. I did Nico's race at Windrock before they built it. It was like 2015 or 16 maybe.
Yep.
And then went to Bailey, did a race there, and then just rode Pisgah for one day. And then I forget where I was headed. I must have been going to the National in New Jersey.
Okay.
Was that Diablo? Or what's it called now?
Mountain Creek.
Mountain Creek, or going up to Mount St. Anne. I forget which one.
Okay.
But yeah, I've only been ridden in Pisgah for one day, so it's been so cool to come back out and ride with those guys. They showed me some insane trails today that it was, as far as training goes, so much better than back home. So it felt so good to get the legs going. And yeah, I mean, the descents are long, you know, they're rooty. They're so much different. Cashin was saying that the dirt was blown out, and I was like, people will be freaking out right now back home if they saw this blown out dirt. Like, it's kitty litter back home. So
like out here it's kind of good setup for testing. I mean, you got the Shaw brothers out here, you got Nico, lots of other dudes are coming in and out of town, so it's a good setup for coming out here to train.
Yep, totally.
I mean, you got chill forest road climbs up, a couple of maybe little techie climbs here and there, just get your blood going good, and then just ripping, rowdy, raw descents.
Yeah, they're super raw. Yeah, the climbs are perfect. Like, you do intervals on them, just kind of dig yourself in and chill. And yeah, they're not too bad at all. I was really surprised. So yeah, as far as training, I think this is the place to be in a sense. Like, a lot of good rain. It feels, wet and loose and slippery, just like Europe is. So
get you kind of ready for some crazier tracks out there.
Totally. I need to get back out here. We do not have roots back home, and if there's something I could ride a little better, it would definitely be some roots.
Anything else you care to add?
We were talking about the Garrett Reynolds Fiend edit from 2016 with Pentagram. If you haven't seen it, you should go watch it. I think it's one of the best overall biking edits of all time. What's your favorite BMX edit?
Man, that is putting me really on the spot.
A-Camp, Anthem 2?
I mean,
It's hard not to.
there's a couple of sections. They're just going to always be like some of your top sections. Brian Foster's sections are always going to be pretty standout to me.
That nose bonk on the tree when he's doing that 3.
Mm-hmm.
I'll never forget that.
Yep. I mean, Chris Doyle's a longtime friend, so anything he puts out is always going to be on my list. But my top section from BMX, hands down, Van Holman, Criminal Mischief.
Yep. I was just watching that the other day.
That blew minds.
He is too gnarly. I didn't realize how good he was until like a couple of years ago. I wasn't too much into street, and then I like watched a bunch of edits, and I was like, he was so before his time.
Yeah.
Same thing with Doyle. He's still, I mean, his inverts, 360 inverts, are better than anyone's inverts these days.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, how in the world? And just his tail whips, that one over the road, the one over, I forget which edit that was. He did it from bank to bank over a rail, a stair set. And I was just like, it was so
Was
perfect.
it like a step down?
Yep.
That was probably his first kink section, and that's in Pittsburgh.
Yep. He seems like the nicest dude. I've never met him.
He is the nicest dude, but once you get to know him, he can be the best shit talker.
I love that. Yeah. Got both sides, you know.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, dude, awesome. It's been great meeting you, hanging out a little bit here at the bike farm and in the Pisgah. And where can people find you at on the social media?
Social media at Shawn Neer, ShawnNeer.
And most active on Instagram, or?
Pretty much it for me. Yeah. Instagram. Try to put out some good edits for you guys.
So we look forward to seeing him.
No.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Shawn.
Yep. Bye.
And if you're interested in checking out Traction Coffee, we've got their link in the show notes.
One thing that Traction is doing that's awesome is they're using some of their profit sharing to help support both bike riders and the Our BMX podcast with helping cover some travel costs for a guest to be on that podcast show.
Yeah, that's super cool of them to do that. And yeah, I guess this kind of turned into a heavy BMX related show, but that's okay by me.
Yeah, speaking of okay, this weather has been pretty okay, unless you live in the Midwest where it's snowing.
Well, yeah, I'm glad we don't have any of that mess in our forecasts, or do we?
Well, the forecast for about the next 7 or 8 days or so has it a little windy and then pretty nice leading into the weekend with some rain on Saturday, which, to be honest, is kind of needed for a lot of the trails right now. And then it gets nice and pretty warm again for next week. But there are some chilly lows this week going into the weekend. We're probably going to have some below freezing temperatures, which, Drew, I know you are not a fan of bugs.
Yeah, hopefully it kills off the larva. And yeah, we do need some rain, so I'm not going to be bummed about that either.
Well, guys, that is a wrap on this week's episode. And as always, you can find us on social media. Just search Pisgah Podcast.
And if you need coffee to get some traction, please subscribe and share us with your pals.
And so looks like we're going to have a little moisture this weekend. I'm not scared of that.
I'm good with that. I'll sleep in and drink some coffee.
Yeah, that's a good plan right there. I think I'll need a rest after this week.
Amen.
Alrighty, well, that's a podcast recorded.